Live from San Francisco, it's Rex Broadcasting Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on!
How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer, and we're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. Bryan Alvarez is wrestling tonight, so I don't know if he'll be joining us. I think it's going to be pretty difficult. He may call in for a couple minutes, but we got a pretty big show tonight. Of course, we got Jeff Jarrett, who's going to be on at about 5:45 Pacific time, 8:45 Eastern, the world champion of the NWA, as well as the president, or I think he's the president of NWA TNA, but he's one of the majority shareholders. And we're going to talk about the business, the wrestling, everything about the that company. And if you got any questions for Jeff Jarrett, you can call him. I expect a really interesting show. Also, we're going to have QUADROS, the television announcer, the fight professor from Pride Fighting Championship. They got a pay-per-view coming up this Sunday. Another pay-per-view coming up this Sunday is XWF taped pay-per-view. And we also understand that the XPW last night in Monaca, Pennsylvania, taped a pay-per-view, which is going to air in April or May. So it's a lot of different stuff on the pay-per-view horizon. And a lot of different things. We got a full bank of phone calls. When someone is done with a call, you can always dial us at 1-800-878-PLAY. A lot of topics to talk about tonight. Of course, the main one, I think, Kurt Angle. It's the thing that everyone's been talking about. Kurt Angle, probably the best wrestler in the business today, is going to be out of action for 1 year. He's having neck surgery. It's an injury that dates back to his amateur wrestling days. And it's just gotten progressively worse. And when he was in a way out pay-per-view, he took a whip into the turnbuckles, and he's been hurting really bad ever since. He was examined by Dr. Lloyd Youngblood in San Antonio, and he recommended spinal fusion surgery. And they're going to be doing whatever they're going to do on Tuesday. They've announced Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle for SmackDown. And however they're going to change the championship or do what they're going to do with the SmackDown championship will be done on Tuesday. And by Tuesday, they have to come up with their plan for WrestleMania. I know there's a lot of different ideas that have been batted around. We can, in fact, talk about ideas for WrestleMania. Of course, WWE very hard hit with injuries, with Randy Orton, Dave Bautista, out for 1 year as well. So anyway, we'll talk about all of those subjects when we come back. And I want to remind you also that in the Observer this week, I've got a huge article on the injury situation in pro wrestling. We look at it from every different standpoint that I could come up with and I talk to every big name in this business. It seems like, not quite, but it sure seems like in the last couple of days talking about the situation. So anyway, we'll be back with more right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 Eastern Time, 5 to 7 Pacific Time, with all the news on professional wrestling. You know, Ira, our producer, before the show mentioned something to me. They're doing, I guess, a year-long samurai drama. It's Japanese television that actually airs here in the Bay Area, and he noted that it's on. They're doing a drama, I guess, all year on Musashi Miyamoto, who's actually a famous, I guess, Japanese, what do they call, samurai warrior. But anyway, one of the actors playing that in that series that aired over the weekend was Keiji Muto. So that was kind of interesting. It's on NHK in Japan, and it can be seen on Japanese TV on satellite. A lot of the satellite systems pick up NHK, which carries no professional wrestling, by the way. So I think it's the one network in Japan that never has wrestling, and it's the one that's available in the United States. So that's how it goes. See, a couple of other things to talk about. Bill Goldberg's situation. We have a lot of calls about that already, so we'll get into that. But he is closer than ever to signing with WWE, and we will. As far as being, I don't expect him in a match at WrestleMania. Would not shock me to see him at WrestleMania. If they can sign him by WrestleMania, I'm sure if he can sign him by if he signed by WrestleMania, I'm sure he's going to make an appearance on that show. WrestleMania is just 2 weeks away at Safeco Field, 3 weeks away, I should say. And of course, Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon and The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin are the top matches. We're going to start with Ed in San Antonio. Ed, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. What I'd like to talk about is a program that I've really been enjoying the last couple of weeks is interaction between The Rock and the Hurricane backstage.
Yeah, I think that everybody's liking that, and I think that's going to continue as long as Rock is on TV every week.
Do you think that it could lead up to maybe Rock even doing a job for the Hurricane, or do you think
doing a job when you're in the main event at WrestleMania you know what I mean? I don't know if they're going to do that.
have Stone Cold help Hurricane out, get a screw job win?
Hey, that's possible. That's possible. I think Rock maybe even wants to do that. We'll see. Yeah, it's possible. But you see, I see that that's what's going to happen Monday with Booker T. And I wouldn't want to do the same thing, the next week as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, because I figured that Stone Cold, they got to do something to set up Stone Cold and The Rock on I think on Monday, because they got to have that match officially announced by the end of the show tomorrow night. And Booker T to me has to win that match since he's facing Triple H. Because if he loses, he's just going to look like too weak of a challenger.
Yeah. Okay. And another question I have for you is on SmackDown. They're out their top heel, and they're out one of their top faces. Who can we look that's going to maybe move over from Raw to fill the void? Are they looking at maybe Austin, Goldberg? I mean,
Austin's been talked about going over there, but I don't know. It's not, obviously not going to happen in the next couple of weeks. Goldberg, I don't know. I don't know which side that they're going to put Goldberg on. I think that you're going to see. For better or for worse, more focus on Undertaker. And I think that Chris Benoit and John Cena are going to get a chance, to carry the ball. Because they have to give some people a chance, and I think those are the two guys, and maybe Rhino.
Yeah, I think John Cena's been really good on his promos. Is he really hurt, or is that just part
No, because he's wrestling at all the house shows. That's just a TV angle. It's so weird because they like when they injured Trish Stratus, they kept her off on the Raw side for that reason. But on the SmackDown side, they injured Cena, but they have him work all the house shows, without even selling an injury. So it's very weird.
Okay, and they decided who's going to take Angle's place?
Not 100%. There are a lot.
There's a lot about Benoit.
Benoit. Obviously that's the logical one, and obviously that's been talked about a lot, and how to do it. And I expect whatever they do, I think they pretty much got to do it all on Tuesday. I think they've got to get the title and get whomever they want to put Lesnar against kind of situated all on Tuesday night. And Benoit is certainly the leading candidate, I think, unless Goldberg signs. And even if Goldberg signs, I don't know if they want to rush him into that program. So, that's a logical candidate. They may do something else, but it'll all have to be done Tuesday.
Okay, and if I could just ask one more thing. I know these two names, but I don't know a whole lot about them. Could you explain to me why Edward Carpentier and Don Leo Jonathan deserve to be in the top 100? Because I don't really know a lot about them.
Don Leo Jonathan was considered the best working man of his size of his era, and he wrestled all over the world and he was always a main eventer. Mainly known for being just tremendously agile for his size. Him and Andre the Giant drew some huge crowds all over Canada.
How big was he?
Don Leo, probably legitimately, I would say 6'5", and closing in on anywhere from 280 to 320 pounds, varying, depending on how old he was. I saw him at the tail end of his career, so he wasn't as agile as he was when he was younger, but I've seen tapes of him. And just a very coordinated big guy and a really tough guy, as a matter of fact, too. Edward Carpentier was, I think that I would say in the history of Montreal wrestling, he's probably the second biggest star, because Yvon Robert is probably the biggest star. But he came into the country from France in the 50s and into Canada and then in the United States, and was a great acrobat, a short, muscular guy who drew everywhere in the 50s. Big draw and world champion in a lot of places. Montreal, AWA, or the originations of the AWA, was world champion in California. So he was a huge star. He main evented Madison Square Garden all the time. So, I think those guys, I think they both actually belong in the top 100. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for the time, Dave.
Okay. Let's go to Tom in Springfield, Missouri. Tom, what's going on? Let's go to Mitch in Oakland. Mitch, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. How's it going, man?
It's going pretty good.
Sorry, I didn't quite know how to follow that one.
I don't even know how to follow it.
I was wondering if you talked to Heyman in the last week. I missed last week's show.
No, I haven't, but I pretty much know the situation, if that's what you mean. I've talked to enough people about that situation.
Is your sense that it was kind of a coup?
No, not at all. My sense is that Vince got tired of fighting with him over direction. Vince has his direction, has his ideas, and Paul has his feel and ideas about wrestling, and they've been fighting it out all the time. And Vince has, with WrestleMania, Vince had his direction, and that's the way they were going to go. And I think both got tired of fighting the other, and it just happened like that.
You know what Heyman's booking ideas were?
As far as
WrestleMania that were vetoed by Vince?
It wasn't so much, it wasn't so much vetoed by Vince. I don't think Heyman really wanted Nathan Jones on SmackDown. I don't think he wanted A-Train getting a big push. I think he wanted to push the workers more. Vince, is still, into the big guys.
Right.
It's all the stuff that you would think it would be. There's no big mystery. I think that, Paul is a game player, and Vince got tired of that, and a lot of people got tired of that, and I don't know that they respected his, what he had done for SmackDown maybe as much as they should have.
Right, because, you can't just say him, because he's just put the guys in the position, and then the guys have really done, the great work. I can't tell you how many great SmackDown matches in the last year I've seen. Oh, but
it's been unbelievable. But the problem is that the SmackDown ratings and the SmackDown house shows were not appreciably stronger than the Raw stuff. Over football season, actually, the SmackDown ratings were stronger. But even then, the house shows weren't appreciably stronger. So when you're arguing over which vision of wrestling is the best for today, Heyman needed to convince Vince by being much stronger, and he didn't. So Vince thinks that his way is best.
Right.
And eventually it was going to happen because it's Vince's thing, and Heyman's not a WWE disciple when it comes to ideas. He's his own guy, grown up, watching a lot of different things and wanting it serious. Not to say no comedy, but the top feuds to be real serious stuff, and right. Vince wants it a little more lighthearted. And there's no saying who's right or wrong. And when things are not doing so well, you've got to, really show your stuff, and I guess he didn't convince Vince, and Vince got tired of the deal.
Do you think we'll be seeing Raw at the Stockton Convention Center again anytime soon?
You show in Stockton?
Yeah, well, no, remember, the last time, basically, before WWE blew up, what I'm saying is that I see it really going...
Oh, you mean like Raw's at the Stockton Civic Auditorium, like I went to in, 95?
Vader Splash.
I was at that show, yeah. I don't see them booking a 3,000-seat building for Raw. It's not that bad yet. 2 years from now, a year from now, but who's to say? It's possible.
It looked like it was going there, but I sense that even though The Rock and Austin may feel slightly stale to some of us, at least it's bringing some sense of resurgence to the business.
I think it
will carry.
I think it's a fake resurgence, though.
I think so too.
It's like business is going to be good from now until WrestleMania. Ratings are going to be up a little bit between now and WrestleMania. But I don't think that this is a permanent thing. I don't think this is a solution, and I'm not sure what the solution is, because when they were on top was the time to develop the young stars, and now that they're realizing they have to, there's not enough of an audience to get them over, it seems like. Anyway, we've got to go ahead to a break. We'll be back with more. Thanks very much, Mitch. We'll be back with more of the Wrestling Observer Live right after this. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We're here every Sunday night, and if you're interested in information on how to subscribe to the Wrestling Observer newsletter or Figure 4 Weekly, which Bryan Alvarez, who's our co-host, who's not here tonight because of he's wrestling tonight, does every week, you can go to www.wrestlingobserver.com. We have news updates, most up-to-date news. We do that every morning, and also information on the latest issue. And like I said, this issue is going to be a big one. We got a lot on injuries in wrestling, a lot of interesting stuff there. I think I'm going to make you something on the history of the WWF title as well. But it's going to be a big issue this week. In fact, all March is going to be real big because we're going to be doing a lot of stuff building up to WrestleMania on March 30th, the biggest show of the year at Safeco Field in Seattle. And it's also a pretty darn big show next Sunday. We've got Stephen QUADROS here, who's going to be in Yokohama, Japan in just a couple days. When are you leaving, Steve?
I leave on Tuesday. Boss, me and Matt Hume all go on the same flight. And I haven't been in Yokohama for a while, but Yokohama is the place where I did my first commentary job for K1.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Kings, 1998. The great Andy Hoog fought on that card.
Yeah. Now, what do you know anything more about, I guess, what's going on with Pride? I mean, every week there's a new rumor. Is there anything settled as far as, I mean, we know there's a show, there's actually quite a good show, which we're going to talk about in just a second, coming up on Sunday. It'll be on pay-per-view, same-day pay-per-view in the United States on DirecTV.
For instance, there was a guy the other day came up to me and he said, "Hey, I hear Antonio Inoki died."
Uh-oh.
I said, "Where did you hear that?" And he says, "There's a rumor floating all around." I said, "Well, actually, the head of Dream Stage passed away, but Inoki didn't."
You know what?
The rumor's getting kind of a little...
Oh, my God, you know what? Shortly thereafter, Morishita died, someone called me up who and actually said, "We heard Antonio Inoki died." It was the same thing because they got it confused with Morishita.
Yeah, you didn't hear that he died. You hear Elvis is alive and hanging out with Jim Morrison in Venezuela. Rumors are great, but the thing is that Pride is back on the horse. It's got a great show coming up here. We've got 2 tournaments coming up. As far as I know, the rumors are just that, rumors. I haven't heard anything about closing shop. When I go over there, though, I'm going to get all the scoop on the whys and the wherefores about the reorganization, if there be one, in the wake of Morishita's unfortunate passing. But this show coming up, Dave, you know, this is going to rock.
Yeah, this is a really good show, and I wanted to talk to you about basically almost all of the matches. This is, I guess the main event is Antonio Nogueira against Emelianenko Fedor.
I finally got that right. It's Fedor Emelianenko. Now, the way they always had it was Emelianenko Fedor, but then everybody that was in the know say, hey, that's his last name. Emelianenko is his last name. So I've had to flip that around in my mind,
Yeah.
That is the main event, but, man, Kevin Jackson against Kevin Randleman for the winner gets to fight Vanderlei for the title. Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's a good match. Now, to me, Fedor is the first guy I don't know, Bob Sapp, I guess, had a chance, but I didn't know it until after the fight. I just thought that Nogueira was just about unbeatable. But Fedor, the way they match up, he's got a really good chance because I think he's a better takedown guy. And as we saw with the Heath Herring fight, he can hurt you on the ground. But then again, who wants to be on the ground with Nogueira because he's the submission master at heavyweight.
Well, one thing that I pointed out to a really good friend of mine who's the editor of a very well-known publication here in the United States is that Fedor has diversified the technique called ground and pound. Usually when people ground and pound, they get in one position and deliver punches from that one position. This guy is constantly changing position, then bam, he'll crack you one. And I'm not talking about a little tiny Mickey Mouse punch. This guy it's like the guy, he's from Ukraine, punches like Igor Vovchanchyn, but takes people down like old Mark Coleman and Kevin Randleman. And he's good at submissions too. Nogueira has got to be at the top of his game for this fight because Bob Sapp is a big giant guy, but it's not the size of the ship, it's the motion of the ocean. And Fedor Emelianenko, even though he looks a little smaller, he's still tipping in about 225, 230, and he's going to be ready. And this will be the true heavyweight championship of mixed martial arts because look at what these guys have done individually. Fedor trashed Heath Herring, the guy who beat Mark Kerr and choked out Tom Erickson, where, come on. Yeah. Antonio Nogueira, he beat every big guy, cleaned out the freaking division practically.
Now, we were talking, you brought up the Quinton Jackson-Kevin Randleman match, and that is an interesting one. I want to get your take on this, because when we've seen Quinton Jackson, okay, I mean, first of all, he's beaten people like Cyril Abidi twice in K1 that, by all rights, he had no business beating, but he beat him twice. So I guess he did have a business beating, especially the second time when it's on a decision, they went the distance. It wasn't like it was lucky getting the first punch in when the guy wasn't, whatever happened in the first fight. But he has these great high-angle takedowns, these big slams, yet Kevin Randleman is, pretty much a world-class wrestler. Who's going to be able to who's the guy who's going to take the other one down?
Well, I think when you get two wrestlers in the ring like that, they usually shut each other down, and they don't go for takedowns. The unfortunate thing is that Kevin, even though he exhibited some good strikes when he stopped and injured that left hook that Saul Solis taught him, the Texas Muay Thai trainer. But I think Quentin is a little bit further along the line as the wrestler who learns strikes than Kevin is, because, as you said before, he beat Cyril Abity twice under his own rules, K1 rules. I think it's going to be a situation where Kevin may have to settle for a less exciting fight if he wants to try and get the win, because if he goes for the exciting fight in the trade, I think Quentin's definitely got the advantage standing up. But still, you got two guys that know how to promote themselves and the fight. The two best American 205-pounders fighting on the Japanese circuit right now. I mean, both of them deserve a shot at the title. I don't know, man. This is a really, really, really competitive matchup and marketable matchup.
Well, the other thing on that one is that the way they match up, Vanderlei Silva's been basically unbeatable for the last couple of years. And I think either of these guys have a very good chance to beat him.
So do I.
Yeah.
But I think what Vanderlei's going to bring into the equation is the experience factor fighting a high level of mixed martial art competition. Vanderlei against Krokop was a very pivotal fight for Vanderlei, because Vanderlei had beaten some guys that couldn't strike that well, or like Sakuraba was smaller than him, he's not a striker, but Vanderlei was always susceptible to strikes. There were people, that's what they thought, because, when he got knocked down by Sakuraba, he got knocked down by Shungo Oyama, Vitor had stopped him. So when he stepped in with Krokop, everybody thought, oh, he's going to get killed unless he takes the guy down. Well, funnily enough, he didn't get killed. As a matter of fact, it would have been a judge's decision. He would have won.
Yeah.
Now, go to Quentin Jackson, who probably would have the better chance striking with Vanderlei. He's going to run into some punches, because Quentin may have beat Abity, but Abity's wild. He's very undisciplined. He throws haymakers. He's like a crazy, street fighter almost. I think both of them do have a shot. I think right now Vanderlei has got stiff competition in those two guys and also Ricardo Arona for a different reason. But if one of these guys, there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. I doubt that there's going to be a draw or no contest or something. The winner is definitely going to give Vanderlei a hard fight, because Vanderlei's coming off dual knee surgery too. Yeah, and that always changes you. Yeah, it does, because injuries like, Tito Ortiz, he got back on the horse and he fought Ken, and it was probably a better opponent. Well, not probably, for sure it was a better opponent than fighting Chuck. Yeah. Or having a rematch with Matashenko, or one of these, tougher younger guys, because age does play a factor.
Now, before we get in, I want to bring up Kazushi Sakuraba against Nina Shembri. What are your thoughts on that one? Because with Kazushi Sakuraba, we've got a guy who clearly, he's got a really bad knee. I mean, it was so evident in his last fight. Sakuraba was, probably one of the most fun fighters of all time. And in his last fight, it was just so sad to watch. I mean, he fought a guy in Gilles Arsene who had nothing, and I don't know if Sakuraba, I don't know what was in his head or what he could do physically. I mean, clearly his knee had blown out, and he was probably not in the condition to fight, but he was good enough to toy with him. But it was really a sad fight to watch, and he, I think it's important that he has to come back strong, because he's the money in Japanese in Pride right now.
Yeah, well, Sakuraba is the legend. I mean, regardless of whether Sakuraba never does well again, he will always be in my heart akin to like an Ali figure, because he was so unique, and it's the way he beat people and what he brought in, and he was just making the whole thing. I mean, he really did. He took Pride from one level, when he beat Royce Gracie especially. I mean, he took it to where the Japanese finally had, instead of a mythical hero like a professional wrestler, even though Sakuraba is a pro wrestler, they had one who they could finally get behind who could beat anyone of his weight. And in fact, the one sad thing about Sakuraba, is that in most of his big fights, he's been outweighed by a great deal, like with Silva. And, at his weight, I don't know that anyone's ever really, no one's beaten him at his weight, because the guys who've given him a tough time are the good strikers that were always 15, 20 pounds heavier. Yeah, I think this fight with Elvis Shembri will be competitive, and Elvis he's not a striker by any stretch of the imagination, and Sakuraba has had hard times with strikers, especially Vanderlei. When he fights straight up submission guys like, jiu-jitsu guys, the Gracies, or Carlos Newton, these type people, he does better, because they fight his game, because he likes to play that chess game on the ground with submissions and grappling and takedowns and this kind of stuff. But when it's a striker, it's a little bit different. Elvis is not a striker, so he doesn't pose a threat there, but Elvis is a really good grappler. He was, an Abu Dhabi competitor. It's the perfect fight because Elvis is not as low as Joe Arsene, but he's not going to be like a test like Anderson Silva, Murilo Bustamante, one of these type of terrors at 185.
Steve, we're going to go ahead to a break. I want to come back. There's the big fight that we're going to talk about when we come back. It's coming up on the 30th, the same day as WrestleMania, and this is like the big fight in Japan because it's Bob Sapp against Mirko Cro Cop, and we'll get Stephen QUADROS' thoughts on that as well as on the last UFC. So we'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Observer Live, I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Of course, Bryan Alvarez is wrestling tonight, so he is not with us. But we have Stephen QUADROS, the fight professor, who, along with Bas Rutten, who are actually considered one of the great announce teams among our readers. Boy, I tell you what, when I think I know it's Bryan Alvarez's favorite announce team is Bas Rutten and Mike Coughlin as well. I mean, in the reviews of the Pride on our website, he's been going through the early Pride. Every week we do Pride from number 1. I think we're at the 5th week, and he just pulls out all these quotes from the DVDs of the early Pride, of the stuff that Boss says, and it's just tremendous stuff. But
yeah, he's great to work with because he and I are two really sick individuals. Even though we dress up in our suits and smile and wave at the audience, I kind of like. I say certain things that activate him that people you don't even notice. Like the thing with O'Hara when he was fighting Randleman. I said, "Boss, knowing that I could just say that O'Hara was really, really terrible." I said, "Boss, just where do O'Hara's skills stand with the rest of the mixed martial art world?" And he says, "At the bottom." I gave it to him on the silver platter because that's what a good play-by-play guy does. He sets up. His running back, he sets up his wide receiver, and then he throws the ball right to him, and Boss is so funny.
Yeah. It's got a natural charm and everything. Well, on the 30th in Japan at Saitama Super Arena, to me, this is one of the... I've been following K1 since it started. I've been following Pride since it started. I've been following professional wrestling since I was born, it seems like. This is a unique fight because, to me, it is the first time that I can remember where there is a fight that, as far as this goes, this is for Japan now, where every professional wrestling fan wants to see it, every Pride fan wants to see it, and every K1 fan wants to see it because you're merging all three worlds with Bob Sapp, who was Mr. Everything in Japan last year, and Mirko Cro Cop, who is the pro wrestler hunter. That's his big gimmick because he's beaten one pro wrestler after another in K1 and Pride matches, and now he's facing the biggest and strongest pro wrestler that he will ever face. I think I'm very safe to say that. And someone who packs a punch. How do you see this one going?
Well, this is a case where Mirko's got to have to use a lot of movement and get Bob tired. Obviously, he can't just go right into him and just trade with him. That would be ridiculous. And he knows that. The low kick is going to be his best friend and to set up the high kick. Mirko's not really a puncher. Now, Bob, on the other hand, is a puncher. One of the problems Bob has now that he's a celebrity in Japan, and his celebrity rivals Inoki's, for sure, you know that, Dave.
Yeah.
Right now, he doesn't have time to train. Everybody's saying, do this interview, do this TV appearance, do this, He talked to me the other day on the phone, and he said, Stephen, I don't have time to train. And I got to train. And I said, yeah, especially you're going to fight Mirko. I mean,
you better train because you know the other guy's training.
Yeah, exactly. Because Mirko, he has the luxury of being fairly anonymous outside as compared to Bob Sapp. When Bob Sapp steps out of a taxi cab, there's no mistake. It's Bob Sapp. He's the only guy that big, with that kind of charisma. Where Mirko, he could wear, trench coat and a mustache. You're going to know it's Bob Sapp.
Yeah. Well,
so training has been a problem as far as in being able to get away and get back to the mountains to train. And for this fight, he's going to have to.
I see the leg kick and I see the stamina. Now, if it was under Pride rules, I think that Bob Sapp would probably win. But I think under K1 rules, you're taking away Bob's best weapon, which is just to smother him and get him off his feet.
Well, here's the situation. If you look at what Bob Sapp did to Hoos twice, you think, well, he beat the greatest fighter in K1 history, Ernesto Hoos, twice by knockout. But Mirko, I don't know how he's training, and usually I wait for my predictions because if I'm going to commentate on the show, I talk to the fighters and get into their head. Then I make my predictions because injuries, the guy girlfriend could have broke up with him. He could have cat died or something. He could be in a bad space. But in this one, Mirko cannot afford to get hit even with a little nicking side punch. I mean, he's got to stay out of range, and it's going to be like 1,000 low kicks. Trust me, he's going to be throwing a low kick. There's a rumor going around that a renowned Dutchman, who's a very big star, was in mixed martial arts, really funny, charismatic individual, may be helping Bob Sapp deal with the low kicks.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's very interesting.
That's a rumor. See, you like rumors, because remember at the beginning of the what about rumors? Oh, yeah. But that's actually a rumor that may be fairly credible. I mean, I know usually rumors generally aren't credible, but that may, because Bob Sapp's going to need somebody with the guidance to deal with the left kick, because Mirko is a southpaw.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a great fight, and K1 needs it. I look forward to, seeing what's going to happen with that one.
Now, coming off of, did you see the UFC?
Yes, I did.
What, that was an interesting show. To me, where, again, with this show, and even more with the next show, where UFC, and this is one of the things that they have the advantage. When I see Japan, they have these big shows that do these big ratings, but what a lot of people don't know is there are weekly television shows that build these things up week in and week out, and that's why they're such a popular deal. And here in the United States, we don't have that build-up television show. And I think it was kind of sad because, I'm a big fan of interviews, obviously, from pro wrestling background. And Matt Lindland, his interviews that I read were just hilarious. And Phil Baroni's a very charismatic guy. And if they had television to build up that fight was a pretty big fight anyway. But it would have been even bigger. Now, when we go on the next show, Matt Hughes and Sean Shirk, this is something different because now you've got literally, except for the super, super hardcore fans, nobody knows Sean Shirk. And that's going to be a tough sell.
Yes, it will, because Baroni and Lindland, that was a great, great build-up. And as you said, it's too bad that they didn't invest the time and money or whatever in the Fox Sports West 2 thing to build that fight, because that could have really put over new guys. Because if you put all your eggs in one basket, whether it be Tito or whoever, the guy you're concentrating all your energies on, you leave these other guys. You got a Baroni and Lindland. Man, to be honest, I would like to see down the road, I know that Lindland said 2 strikes and you're out, but it wasn't that dominating of a performance, and Baroni came back a little bit in the second. I want to see a third fight between those guys, but I want to see one of those guys have the title and for it to be the title. If Murillo steps out of the UFC, then obviously Lindland is going to have to fight somebody to win the title. But Lindland's going to have a hard time beating Murillo. I mean, he didn't do it well the first time. Murillo is the best guy, but the Shirk versus Hughes fight, you're right, because both those guys are soft-spoken, corn-fed guys.
Yeah.
And there's no Tank Abbott, Ken Shamrock. Those guys know how to promote. Baroni knew how to promote, and for some reason, he kind of made a star out of Matt Lindland.
Well, Matt Lindland came back.
Exactly. He discovered something about himself that, hey, I know how to promote.
I know how to do a promo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that, to me, was a very exciting fight. I like both fighters. They're both great, and they both thought it was one of the better fights in a while in the UFC as far as competition and things, but the promo was the thing. And Dave, you're a pro wrestling guy, you understand about this. People know when a promo is fake. They know when a guy's rehearsing his lines and saying the same thing over and over again, and it's kind of fake. But if you get a guy like a Tank, who, if people didn't care whether he won or lost, did you notice that?
Yeah.
When he walked out of the ring, everybody cheered him.
Yeah. And he couldn't have lost any worse.
Right. He got tapped out. He didn't even land a punch on Frank Mir.
Yeah.
And Frank Mir is now... was he going to face Tim Sylvia? I don't know.
Now, what did you think Tim Sylvia had a chance? Because it's funny. One of my best friends went down to a casino in Vegas right before, and he was asking me about betting on that thing. And I told him, do not bet on that main event because. And the reason I say that was because it was like 5-1 odds, and I go, do not bet on that main event at 5-1 odds because he's got a hell of a lot better chance than that.
Yeah.
But I did not. But saying that, I didn't expect him to win at all.
I did not expect Sylvia to win either, but it was mainly because of my own ignorance of what he had done. Now, I knew of his record, but I thought, well, Rico's going to take this guy down. I mean, this guy knocks people out. He's a stand-up fighter, so he's going to get taken down, and Rico's going to submit him or ground and pound him. But then I talked to a Militich on the phone. Now, I said to Pat, but Pat, you're his trainer. Come on, you're going to say that no matter who it is. He said, no, Steven, this guy's going to beat Rico. And the way he said it to me, I thought, maybe, and then when I saw the program, because I wasn't there live, and I saw the interviews, and when I saw him in the ring, I said, uh-oh, this ain't fake. This guy is really in here, relaxed and evil, and as a matter of fact, he looked like a great big James Porter in the face.
Yeah.
But his body's more like Chuck Wepner type build.
Yeah.
But, dude, I mean, nobody in the UFC can stand up with that guy.
Yeah. And he's not, and obviously he's not going to be easy to take down because Rico didn't come close, really.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah.
That was so awesome because I think the logical good first defense for him would be Gan McGee, the guy that stopped Pedro.
Yeah, two giants.
Giants.
Yeah.
Because Frank Mir, I don't think they should put him in there yet because he's got to learn how to block punches because if he doesn't get a quick submission on Tim, as I said in this other interview, he may go from leading man to character actor.
Yeah. Steven, we've got to wrap this up right now. I want to thank you very much, and good luck on your trip, and I hope we have a great show.
Yeah, Dave, it's always a pleasure. Tell Bryan I'm sorry he wasn't there, and I'll talk to you guys when I get back.
Okay, we're going to go take a phone call real quick. We're going to go to Dan in Chicago. We're going to have Jeff Jarrett up in just a second. Dan, what's going on?
What's going on, Dave? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
I got a couple questions for you. How do you think, cause I mentioned this a couple weeks ago about Sting, do you think with the injuries now that he has a better shot at going in there, WWE?
Yeah, better. I think just because of they're weak on the depth with all of these guys getting hurt all at the same time. So, yeah.
Do you think there's the negotiations now, or no?
I think there's probably dialogue just because it makes sense that, they're exploring all their options.
Right.
I haven't heard anything as far as direct negotiations with Sting. I also haven't asked because the one that everyone's, curious about is Goldberg, who we know there's serious negotiations with and that they've got ideas for right now. The problem when bringing in all these guys now, when we're talking about, is all of these guys, because they have their money and they have their lives and they have their family, don't want to go on the road 200 days a year. And WWE is about going to these house shows and everything like that. So it's you don't want to bring in, you don't want to wind up like WCW where you have all of these guys dominating your television and then you send these Chris Benoits who don't get a lot of TV time out on the road and then you're unhappy because they can't draw a house when they main event. So they have to be careful not to bring in too many. I think bring in one at a time for a few weeks rather than let's bring everybody in now, if you know what I'm saying. Okay? I think that we've lost Dan. We're going to be back with more. We're going to be back with Jeff Jarrett right after this. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And with Bryan Alvarez not here tonight, he's wrestling tonight. Jeff Jarrett is not with us yet. He should hopefully be here at the top of when we come back from the hourly break. So I'm going to go to Justin in Erie, Pennsylvania. Justin, what's going on?
Hey, what's up? How you doing, man?
Doing really good.
Yeah, I want to know what's the status on Ultimo Dragon.
Ultimo Dragon is pretty darn close to coming to the WWE. He has not signed a contract, but I would expect him there within the next couple of months.
Do you think there's any chance of him feuding with Lord Steven Regal again?
No, because they're considering him for SmackDown.
Oh, Smack. I remember I seen a match from Super Brawl 97, I think it was. I think that was a 5-star match. That match was...
Well, the matches I used to love Ultimo Dragon in were with Dean Malenko.
Yeah, Dean Malenko and Rey Mysterio Jr.
Rey Mysterio Jr., those were great matches, too, yeah, absolutely. And Chris Jericho in Japan, that's a good one. Chris Jericho, is one of the people who really wants him in, so... But the plan right now is for Ultimo Dragon on SmackDown. Of course, they can change that, nothing's decided until he's there.
Yeah, so his injury is fully recovered?
He's not fully recovered. He'll never be fully recovered, but here's the question on Ultimo Dragon. The question is, again, can he handle the schedule? Because I've seen Ultimo Dragon in a couple of matches in Japan and in Mexico, and I would say he's probably 90% of what he once was, and 90% of Ultimo Dragon is pretty great. Okay. But whether he can do that 200 nights a year, no one knows, and I don't think he knows, and we're not going to find out. And again, So whether he'll make it or not, I think depends on his ability to hold up to the schedule. Ability-wise, he's certainly more than good enough to be on that roster.
Do you think they're going to push him as a face or a heel?
I don't even know if they know. Actually, I take that back. What I've heard as a face, yeah.
As a face?
Yeah. That was the plan. Of course, who knows how that goes? You know what I mean? But yeah, the ideas I heard were as a face.
You think they're gonna have him feud with Rey Mysterio Jr. or Tajiri?
Tajiri actually is something that's been talked about.
Oh, that's gonna be a real good match.
It'll be some good wrestling and similar styles and everything. We got to go ahead to our hourly break, okay?
Okay.
Thanks a bunch, Justin. We will be back with more. We'll be taking your phone calls. Hopefully we'll have Jeff Jarrett on the air when we get back right after the news break. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of the Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on!
Okay, welcome back to hour number 2 here on Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and we've got a full bank of phone calls. We're going to start taking calls in just a second. We'll see how the guest situation works out. We will have a guest either way in a couple of minutes. We're going to go to Alan in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Alan, how are you today? Alan.
I'll ask you a question pertaining to what's going on with Vince McMahon and Hogan and the stipulation. Now, he's probably going to lose, I guess.
Who, Vince McMahon?
Yeah.
I would hope so, because Hulk Hogan is not retiring forever.
Well, I know that. I mean,
and I hate those retirement stipulations. You know, retirement matches used to be such a big deal because people actually believed that even though the guys almost never retired, they were gone for a year.
Right.
Once it got to like we did in WCW where a guy would retire on Sunday and come back on Monday, the whole thing just got ridiculous. And so because of that, I didn't even like them bringing up retirement on that show. I just thought that when you do that, you're just telling everybody, oh, God, it's one of those angles. It's one of those pro wrestling angles that never gets adhered to. But
I figured what they would do is maybe have Goldberg help Vince screw Hogan and then maybe do like a stipulation where he gets reinstated by someone like Linda or something. You think they'll do that?
It could be done. I don't think they want to bring Goldberg in as a heel because when Goldberg worked heel, it was not that successful in WCW. Now, if the people turn Goldberg heel, and nothing would surprise me, then he'll go heel, but the idea of bringing him in and telling people to dislike him, I don't see that coming out of the bat. And I think that's one of the reasons why I don't think he's going to work with Brock Lesnar on WrestleMania. I think that's one of the reasons why it probably won't happen, even if he's signed by then.
Mm-hmm. I also had another question. You know, in light of, Hennig's death and everything, Tom Zink had said on his website that there was people at the funeral who weren't exactly Hennig's best friends, like the Gagnes.
Yeah.
Is that true?
The Gagnes were no. They were certainly Greg and Kurt always had a rivalry. There's no doubt about that.
And Vern and Larry never really got along. Is that true? Well,
you know, I don't know exactly. I know that Larry left to start his own promotion because he knew that Vern was never going to step aside.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. They worked together for years and years.
Yeah, they weren't that close, but I mean, there was some respect there. But
yeah, they went to the same high school and everything. Vern did recruit. I think Vern recruited Larry. I'm not sure of that because that's before my time. But yeah, I don't know. I know that when Kurt passed away, there were some people who thought that Vern and Greg were not as nice in the comments as they could have been. But I think that Greg was kind of telling the truth too. Because Kurt probably did have a tough time with all those amateur wrestlers at first, because, he wasn't a great amateur wrestler.
Right, so there was some tension. I mean, it's relevant now, but, there was something there?
Well, with Greg and Kurt, as far as, in the mid-'80s, sure there was tension. It was bound to be. And they worked against each other as well. But anyway, we got to go ahead to a commercial break, okay? We'll be back right after this. You'll listen to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and we're going to go back to the line here. We're going to go to John in Chicago. John, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. Excuse me. I just wanted to hit on a couple things that happened this week. First of all...
A lot happened this week, boy.
Yeah. First of all...
The Kurt Angle thing, yeah.
Were you laughing as I was when I was watching SmackDown with the McMahon and Hogan promo, because they have become such parodies of themselves. They're almost a parody of a parody of themselves.
I it's a funny thing because watched that promo, and so much went through my head because it was like, I've watched those two guys for 20 years now. Actually, Vince for 30, but Hogan for over 20. And their rise, to power in the 80s and everything, and the fact that even though they're obviously working together, and that's everything that was done was to build up a match.
Right.
What they were saying was, in essence, a lot of true frustrations that the two of them have, which made for a fascinating interview. I loved the interview, but there was something about it when it was over. Do you want to see the match? And when it was over, I didn't want to see the match.
No, I didn't want to see the match either.
I think maybe I'm scared of the match, but I didn't want to see the match.
The sad thing is, if Hogan were to lose this match, it's like, if you're like the normal fan, you're like, well, Shane beat his father, Hogan can't beat his father.
I cannot imagine Vince winning that match. Then again, stranger things have happened in wrestling, but it's WrestleMania, and then Hogan's Babe Ruth, and I just don't see it happening any other way. But I mean, some of that stuff when they were talking about the trial and everything, it was interesting to hear.
That's true.
Yeah.
The other two things. First of all, it's with this Triple H. Is it racist or is it not racist promo? I've just turned off totally on seeing this guy on TV because it just for them on their website to like defend that promo and say, well, we didn't use the N-word, like they would use in the past or anything like that.
They never used that word in the past, as far as I can recall in wrestling. Maybe way back in the old days. But
they cited an example with Ron Simmons and Vader, where Harley Race used it.
In WCW.
WCW. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure that when that happened, there were people whose heads were about to roll. If you remember.
The thing that
that period.
The thing that makes me so mad about this guy, it's just like he holds everybody down, or he has usual amount of influence in backstage. He holds everybody down. He's not the worker he used to be, and now he's involved in these promos or these skits or these angles, especially coming after the Katie Vick, disgrace.
Well, you can't necessarily, you can't necessarily blame him, other than the fact that he's influential enough that if he really didn't want to do it, and you have to overlook weaknesses and look at strengths, because right now there's not a whole big depth of people for him to face, and he's got to be building them up rather than saying, hey, this is why they're not on my level. Hey, you better have someone on your level because you need someone to draw with, because the Steiner thing is over and now you need somebody else.
And who knows? Who knows? One wrong step one way, or his problems with his legs, he could be out of the scene as well.
Yeah. John, we got to get running, okay?
Okay.
I want to get to Jeremy BORASH. Jeremy.
Hey, Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. What's going on?
Well, en route trying to wake up the world champ, who is, I think we're resting after a hard week. We've had a rough one, but I'm going to try and still see if we can get Jeff Jarrett on here in the program. But until that time, I am not a world champion, but I'll hopefully suffice.
Okay. Jeremy, TNA has been around now for 8 months. I was going to ask Jeff this, but since you're very, you're living and breathing this thing as much as anybody. And you've traveled with Jeff a lot. You traveled to the boxing matches with him the last couple of weeks and everything like that, watching different products. What would you say are the biggest lessons that you guys have learned as far as wrestling, and not just wrestling? I'm talking about television industry, because the key to this thing. I'm sure you're looking for more television clearances and stuff, and this is like probably the worst time in the history of wrestling to do that. And what do you sense is the stumbling blocks that you're running into, and what do you sense are the things that have to change to get wrestling back on television the way, it was a few years ago when, where you could have gotten on a good outlet which would put you pretty much on the map?
Well, first of all, what have I learned? I think I've learned more in the last 9 months of doing this than, obviously, than any time I spent in WCW, and any time I spent overseas working with the WWA. It's been an emotional roller coaster since the first day. It's been the hardest 9 months of my life, and Jeff and I were just talking about this yesterday. It's like, we both feel for Paul Heyman now after what he went through. I think I've aged 10 years in the last 9 months. I think Jeff's aged 10 years in the last 9 months. It's a learn-as-you-go process, and we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into going into this, but thankfully we've got a good crew, and people have been able to adjust on the fly and learn from our mistakes and move forward that way. Nobody gave us a chance. I can honestly tell you that. I don't think there was a person that thought we'd still be around 9 months from now, back when we started out. But at this current stage in the game, we're realizing that there are other profit streams, other revenue streams outside of the norm, outside of what the traditional wrestling companies have been built on, and that's being able to, generate enough money from an international standpoint where wrestling is still very hot and not diluted from a fan's perspective. We're also looking at a lot of different opportunities that we aren't spending money on that normal wrestling companies probably do. For instance, we don't tour. We are strictly, we really don't have to reach that big of a fan base from a pay-per-view buy standpoint to remain not only just stable but profitable. And, until wrestling turns around and granted, we're, I think, coming out of the bottoming out period of this cycle. We just want to be first to get that network spot when it becomes available. When's that going to be? If it's a year, if it's 2 years, it may be that long, but we're going to be the first person to get it.
Now,
the first company at least.
What kind of when you've been talking to different people, what's the feedback as far as television and wrestling? Because you and I can sit here and cite 30 years of history of the thing, being highly rated and less product on the air now, certainly less diversity of product on the air now than any time before, in the last 20 years. I mean, in a sense, from a television standpoint, there's a hole. I mean, I don't think anyone doubts as far as like NWA TNA goes that if their right exposure was there. I mean, certainly I know with the expenses that you guys have on pay-per-view, the right exposure on television to back it up, you could be running at a really strong profit with what you're doing right now just because you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, without a doubt. But at the same time, Dave, I'm not so sure, and I'm just saying this, it may still seem like a very foreign concept. But looking at where television is going, in fact, I think HBO just signed a deal, or the creators of Sex and the City, to put that exclusively on pay-per-view. It's going to be on-demand programming, and that's what you're going to be seeing a lot more of. In that sense, if that becomes the norm, then, well, we were real ahead of our time, maybe too early. But, I'm not so sure, and I still believe in the original concept of this. At the same time, will we see us on national television? Do we need that? I think so. And also, let me throw this other curve at you, and this isn't something that we're finding so much in the States, but it's especially internationally. A big reason why we are so successful internationally is because people are tired of dealing with Vince.
Yeah.
Australia is, for example, there is no WWE pay-per-view in Australia right now. We are the only game in town because they were tired of dealing with Vince. And we've turned that around and been so accommodating to them and focused on them and gave them some attention, and the fans are responding there, that, partially it's not only our effort, but the efforts not being put forth by Vince McMahon.
How soon before you can go weekly in Australia on pay-per-view?
Well, actually, Fox 8 just picked up our Explosion show, which is going to be another good revenue stream for us. And, the way it's priced and the way it's ideally, I'd like to go every week, but unfortunately, our numbers dipped a little bit from our first show, and I wasn't surprised about that at all. We've been on twice there in Australia. First show did great numbers, second show dipped a little bit, and that was, maybe a curiosity buy, whatever the case may be. But once we get on a weekly time slot, which I think starts next week, maybe the week after, we will do nothing but drive people to that pay-per-view. So our numbers are going to skyrocket there, and I think once they do, I can't see them not taking us weekly.
Okay, Jeremy, we're going to go ahead to a commercial break, and we're going to come back. We've got a full bank of phone calls, so we'll start taking them as well. Right after this, you're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to the Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We're here with Jeremy BORASH of NWA TNA, and we've got a full bank of phone calls. I want to remind everyone also, the latest in wrestling information, you can always go to www.wrestlingobserver.com, and there's information on how to get both Wrestling Observer newsletter and Figure 4 Weekly on the website. Figure 4 Weekly is funny as hell, and then Wrestling Observer newsletter crammed with all the latest wrestling news in detail from all over the world, and we got a huge story this week on the injury situation in wrestling. A lot of different comments on a lot of different things having to do with that situation. And as Jeremy, as you well know, most of the injuries in wrestling we never hear about.
No, or realize the severity of it.
I think that because the guys are in denial half the time, too.
You're exactly right. They are. And, you know, unfortunately, it's a pretty one-sided business in terms of, you know, you get injured, you don't get paid. And that's why they're that way.
Yeah. It's better now than, at least as far as WWE goes, it's better now than it has been at certain times historically in the past. Probably not as good as in WCW, but now you know, you were in WCW. And, I mean, I used to always hear this, and you know, every time somebody got hurt in WCW, I don't know if it will, you know, management, there was always the suspicion that they weren't really hurt, even when they had real knee surgery. And some of the guys probably weren't really. I don't want to say weren't really hurt.
About half, at least half the injuries you saw there at the end weren't real.
There you go, and you know.
I know, and it's very convenient. And you know what?
Well, I mean, I remember certain times when it seemed like everybody was getting injured, and you know, it was the times when the guys didn't want to be there.
Well, that's why I always, you know, was I was always appreciative of Jeff Jarrett. I mean, if you think of it, because he was always, you know, even in the worst of worst times, you know, he was the only main eventer that was still sticking around working and trying to make the company go. I mean, there was a time where Nash wasn't around, Goldberg wasn't around. I mean, there were so many guys that were sitting out for whatever reason, and you know, unfortunately, that led to a pretty, you know, stale period of creativity. But it was, it's still interesting to see how many people were actually not. But you know, not like today. And unfortunately, the injuries that are going on right now are very real and are taking some very good talent out of this business.
Yeah. Now, you know, one of the things I always, you know, this is one of the saddest things about WCW going down is that, you know, in the 80s and stuff, when there were certain things in wrestling, I always thought, you know, it would really be great if these guys had guaranteed contracts and actually could get paid when hurt so they could recover from these injuries rather than continue to work. Because guys in the old days, because they had to, you know, I mean, they were tough guys. The guys now are tough guys too. But the point is, you know, people go, you know, the guys now, you know, are getting surgery that a lot of the old timers went through. Well, that's because they had to, because they couldn't get paid any other way. And it's a blessing that a Kurt Angle, I mean, my God, if you understand the kind of pain, and, you know, no one's questioning Kurt, the kind of pain the guy must be in to go down now with WrestleMania 3 weeks away. You know, I mean, you know that there's no other alternative. Yet, I will also say that there are guys in that same situation in the past, because they weren't going to make any money, would have worked through it. But when that happened, and when, you know, there was so much abuse to that system, and it turned out to be a nightmare too.
You know, it's unbelievable. It really did. You know, and then there's things that happen like, you know, there's a real human side of it. Take Sid, for instance. You know, Sid still, I mean, can't walk.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's very, very sad. And that's a lot of times that's something I really didn't realize until I was, you know, as a fan, you hear the injuries, you don't realize the actual pain and emotional drama that these guys go through because of that. Sid's life will never be the same again because of that one match.
Yeah. And you know, like better or for worse as far as Sid as a worker, you know, Sid was a guy who, you know, like was really, really obviously into training and things and into being, you know, somewhat athletic and everything. And it's like, man, he, you know, emotionally, you know, here's a guy who was a big wrestling star, and now he's in his early 40s, and I mean, you know, so much of what he once was taken away from him because, you know, that was as far as like the injuries go, that was one of the sickest injuries I've seen though.
Yeah, has to be. I was just and unnecessary. You know, you don't need a guy like that going off the second rope, but. You know, that's another thing, too, I think, from my perspective, seeing a very human side of this is a lot of these guys you travel on the road with and they become your best friends. You know, imagine your best friend not being able to walk again. And, it's you know, it's kind of weird. It's definitely a very human side of it that I didn't realize until, you know, not as a fan, certainly, but now I've got much more compassion for everything they go through.
Let's go to Randy in Somerville, Tennessee. Randy, what's going on?
Oh, Mr. BORASH?
Hey, Randy, how are you?
Hey, how you doing? After the awesome match between Jerry Lynn and Super Crazy Wednesday night, are you starting negotiations to bring him in?
Yeah, I think you're going to see pretty much all the lucha talent that we've seen put up against Jerry Lynn. In fact, we've got I'd love to give it away this week, but we got some interesting things for Jerry this Wednesday. I will definitely tell you.
But no one's allowed to know, which maybe we should talk about later too. But go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely, you'll see Super Crazy and definitely see Hoobie again.
Now, if you heard anything about Hoobie, because Hoobie got hurt on, I don't know how serious last night.
Yeah, I heard something about that. I heard something.
Yeah, I mean, I heard he hurt his knee in Pittsburgh, but I didn't hear,
Actually, I just talked to a couple of guys that are coming back from that show, so they're going to, after I'm done here, I'm going to find out what the deal is. So,
okay.
He wasn't scheduled to be on this week, but hopefully it's not going to be something that's going to be taking him out long term. He's really had a roller coaster 9 months, but I can't say enough about.
He came out of it good though. The last month or so, I mean, every report I've gotten in the show that we saw, a week ago Wednesday, he looked great.
Yeah, that's the good thing. You have a roller coaster ride, but I always like to see guys come out of it and end up being stronger than ever. That's what he is right now.
Yeah. Anything else, Randy?
Can I ask you a quick question, Dave?
Of course.
I hate to get off topic, but a couple weeks ago in the Observer, you wrote in the Raw report in the Battle Royal that Rock Hogan, or quote unquote Hogan Booker T.
Yeah.
Do you think that was the case, or was that how the show was written to be like that? Or
I think. Okay, to me, in that situation, because, see, Booker T, and we talked about this earlier, Booker T needs a lot of help right now in that people, accept him at a certain level, but now he's got to be at a higher level because Triple H doesn't have any contenders on that roster with Steiner not making it. And, just with all the people going down, I mean, they've got to get, the key guys to me are, Benoit and Booker T got to get over. And to me, they got to, whether it's, the idea that, okay, he threw Rock out in the Battle Royal was good, but then the closing scene was, isn't Rock so cool? He waved at Booker T and all that. And it was like the closing scene was Rock. And I understand, Rock is a bigger superstar than Booker T, but Rock doesn't need to be protected. Rock's going to be a big superstar at WrestleMania no matter what happens. I think that they really should have ended that show with the spotlight on Booker T. And it reminded me of Hogan Warrior and when it happened, I didn't understand it, but 10 years later, I do understand it. And Hogan, in his book, as much as said it, that he understood. It's not winning and losing, and a lot of people, will look at, well, this guy lost this match, so he's putting someone over. It's really putting someone over and giving them the spot. In the spotlight, which is both the promotion and the other guy doing it, and I think that Rock, and giving him the spotlight, which is both the promotion and the other guy doing it, and I think that Rock didn't really do it, even though he lost. And I hate to knock Rock because he's really such an entertaining, accepted on the level of Triple H, and I don't think that the last 2 weeks have done that. Okay.
Yeah, I understand. One more question, Mr. Borash. What in the world was Moondog Spot doing Wednesday?
Good question. I wrote this in my column on Friday. There wasn't a single guy outside, I believe, of Jeff or Jerry Jarrett that knew that was going to happen. And I couldn't tell you why it happened, and I can't tell you why it might happen again Wednesday, but I'm sure it's going to go somewhere. And I don't think it's going to end up with Moondog Spot in the X Division, but...
well, hopefully not.
Right.
Well, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, you're very welcome. We're going to go to Derek in Buffalo. Derek, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on, Dave? Hey, Jeremy, how are you doing?
Good, bud. How are you?
Pretty good. The question I wanted to ask was, on the last WWA pay-per-view, I saw the NWA World Heavyweight Champion come out with his NWA music. How was that possible?
Well, that was the promotional. That was the reason why I was there. We agreed with Andrew McManus, the guy who was put on the pay-per-view. In fact, Malice came out with the new Trish music. We've got...
Yeah, I noticed that, too.
Yeah, and, we're just going to hopefully... there are unfortunately not enough big players right now in wrestling that I think the best thing for all of us to do, anybody who's got television, XWF, whoever it is, pool our resources together, and, we're open to share talent going back and forth, and thankfully that's what we did there. And I think it was good cross-promotion. I mean, I don't know how many people saw that pay-per-view, but... hopefully if anybody did, they were made aware of the situation with TNA.
Now, what
about Nathan Jones, though? How was he there?
He was there.
Yeah, that was...
I know, but he's with WWE. I don't know how Vince would feel about that,
I'm sure he didn't feel happy about it. I'm sure he didn't feel happy about it for a lot of reasons, but it was taped before he had signed with WWF.
Okay, yeah,
or WWE.
Job, too, so I was like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeremy, what is anything up with WWA as far as future tours or future pay-per-views?
Last I heard, and my role in that company is not what it was, just because of obviously time restraints these days. But Last weekend in May, I want to say, 3-day tour scheduled, Sydney, Melbourne, and then pay-per-view in Auckland, New Zealand, I believe. So, and on that, and I've talked to Andrew back and forth, but it looks like a lot of TNA talent will be going, providing that tour still comes off. I haven't heard anything as of lately, but...
Is Sting on that tour, or do you even know?
Yeah, that's the plan right now.
Okay.
I don't know if it's been finalized or not, but that's the plan.
Okay, we're going to go ahead to a break right now. We're going to come back with more phone calls. We actually don't have any lines open, so I was going to give, but I'll give the number. It's 1-800-878-PLAY. There will be one line open in just a second, so you can call in if you get your timing right, and we'll see you right on the other end of the break. You'll listen to Wrestling Observer live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Hey, welcome to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter. We're here with Jeremy BORASH of NWA TNA. And sometimes WWA as well. And we got a full bank of phone calls. Jeremy, one of the things with WWE right now is, of course, their domestic house show business is so-so. It bottomed out in November, which, if anything else, the one good thing that we can say is that it is getting stronger. And as they go, pretty much, for better or for worse, that's how the industry goes. But they have always, and they're just this last week in South Africa was another example. They're doing phenomenally overseas, phenomenal reactions, sellout houses and everything. For you guys, I mean, as obviously you're working, and as they are, at getting television in new markets, any thoughts as far as overseas tours?
Yeah, actually, I would say in due time we'll hit Australia probably first. A lot of things, a lot of the problems that with touring internationally, and I found this with doing the WWA tours, is you go into a country and, one of the last things you do is pay out at your gate and everything. And, well, then, for instance, in Switzerland, I think it ended up paying last minute $20,000 owed in taxes and stuff. So there's a lot of unforeseen costs. And then you actually, when you do the money and transfer it to U.S. dollars and the currency transfers and everything, it's not as profitable as you'd think. There still is a lot of money and great crowds, but, you run into some roadblocks you don't see coming sometimes. Believe it or not, WCW didn't make a dime. In fact, I think lost a few $100,000 in our sellout tour of Australia.
I remember that, yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of things, you really have to have your act together to tour internationally. I guess for us right now, we've been asking, get a lot of questions, when are we going to take TNA on the road? And it's such a losing proposition unless you're doing a very basic setup with a very basic house show, very basic production. It's very difficult to make money like that. It's essentially, look at how many indie promotions make money. None. Very, very few. So we just want to be smart about it, and it's not about ego. We'd love to tour and probably, could do some decent numbers in some markets, but at the same time, that's not a risk we're ready to take yet, and I think that's just smart business.
Let's go to Bryan Oakley. Bryan, what's going on?
Hey, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing really good.
Quick question for you, Dave. Are you going to SmackDown in San Jose at the end of the month?
Yes, I am.
All right, me too. Just wanted to get your quick thoughts on the local indie scene, more particularly, here in California with the whole NorCal, SoCal angle. I mean, you heard about that? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I've seen them do variations of Northern California, Southern California, actually since the 60s, but, I mean, I know a little bit about what's going on as far as some of the APW guys going down south, and they always bring guys up north and everything like that. I mean, but I actually don't know the specifics.
Do you see any big names, particularly out of the Bay Area, coming up?
In what sense? As far as going to WWE or NWA TNA or
even TNA.
I mean, Mike Modest and Donovan Morgan were on here last week, and they talked about talking with them, for May.
What do you think about Bobby Quance?
Bobby Quance. Have you guys seen Bobby Quance? Jeremy?
Never heard of him, actually. And
Bobby Quance is a good high flyer.
And he's a rookie, too.
Yeah, he's picked it up real fast. I've never seen him wrestle live, but I've seen some tapes of his stuff, and, he's a good high flyer.
What's interesting, too, about that, I mean, we don't, believe it or not, get a lot of tapes from California. I mean, and I get, sift through a lot of them. Majority of our tapes all come from the Northeast. I don't know if it's just why that would be
closer geographically. One of the things that you and I talked about, I don't know why this is, but it's a million times better for you and for everyone to see someone live than to watch them on tape. Don't you think?
Yeah.
A million times, yeah. You can't possibly. I'll tell you what. Here's a good example. Johnny Storm. and I've seen him on different tapes before, but when I saw him in person at XPW about a month ago, I was blown away. I was absolutely blown away. And I've seen him on tape and everything, but just getting in front of the right people is going to do more for you than a tape ever will. Because a lot of times the tapes are just, camcorders in a corner of a gym, and it's not real easy to watch.
Yeah. Do you know who Johnny Storm's wrestling Wednesday? Is that released?
We're thinking Amazing Red. I don't know if that's for sure yet, though.
Really? Oh, yeah. That should be a great high-flying match.
Yeah, it'd be real good. Johnny Storm to me is, I can't wait for America to see him if they haven't already from other wrestlers.
Almost no one would have seen him. I've seen him on Ring of Honor tapes, and I've seen him on tapes from England. That's about it. Yeah. Okay, I've got to go to a caller, and when we come back, we're going to have Jeff on with Jeremy. So, Jarrett will be with us.
For Bobby Kwan, Jeremy.
Okay.
What's that?
All right, guys, have a good evening.
Okay, thanks a bunch. We're going to go to, let's see, we'll go to Jeffrey in New York. Jeffrey, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, guys? I have a question about Tim Sylvia. Do you think there's anybody in the MMA game right now that could take on Tim Sylvia and actually beat him? UFC or K1 or Pride?
Well, in K1, I think all those guys would take him. I shouldn't say that. He's a big, tough guy. But I've never seen him in a straight kickboxing match.
No, not in a K1 rules. I'm talking anybody who in the game in the no-holds-barred match.
Oh, in a no-holds-barred match, could anybody beat him? It depends on, how they match up. If Nogueira had him in that same armbar that Rico Rodriguez had, he might have been able to complete it. But Nogueira probably couldn't take him down. I think, Bob Sapp, I think, would beat him, just on pure size and power. I'm just trying to think as far as some of the other top heavyweights. Fedor's a good takedown guy, and we don't know how good he would be if he can get taken down. Obviously, Rico's a good takedown guy and didn't take him down. I wonder if, a really great wrestler might be able to neutralize him by taking him down. You know how MMA is. It's one of those things where there's, rock, paper, scissors, and there's always someone who can beat someone. And, people thinking that there's this unbeatable guy, I've never seen it in MMA. There's always a style that's going to beat a guy because there's so many different styles there, if you know what I'm saying. But he's going to be tough. I don't see, he's a big, tough guy, and in UFC, I look at, the list of, if you go Frank Mir and Gan McGee and everything, they're going to have trouble with him.
Yeah, that was another thing you brought up, styles. I've been following martial arts before MMA, and one thing that occurred to me is that when they list the styles like Militech fighting systems, do you see this as a new type of style that's going to be formed like jiu-jitsu was formed many hundreds of years ago? I think that we're seeing it change, and we're going to continue to see it change for the next 10 years because everyone's learning, and it's going to evolve because there's so much fighting, and every system is going to, it's like the system that works. What's going to happen is everyone's going to go in their gym and figure out how to beat that system, and then you got to come up with a new system. It's kind of like football in that, like the offenses, they evolve, and then it's like sometimes stuff that from the 60s will come back now, and hopefully that's going to be the same thing with wrestling because a lot of the old stuff, people haven't seen, and it can be new again. Because, in sports, of course, it's to beat someone, but in MMA, it's still, 30 years from now, when we look back, this is still going to be primitive, just as like when we look back in 5 years, we go, oh, my God, it's so primitive compared to today, and I think it's going to always happen. And, the Militech guys, they're on top of the heap, so they're the ones to beat, but I remember when other clubs were like that, whether it was jiu-jitsu guys or whatever, people learned to beat them, and then they'll learn, so. Very well. And my last question is, do you agree with Luthez in what he said about Antonio Rocca, that he was really the start of the guys who didn't have to have any previous experience in amateur wrestling? There were guys like that in the 20s. Well, there were guys like that, but he was saying like he was the one that really, and he was the one that was like the big draw that really. But there were big draws going back long before Rocca, like Dano Mahoney and Gus Sonnenberg and people like that had no wrestling experience. It's always been about drawing, and there's probably more of an emphasis on realistic wrestling ability back then, but ultimately, it's still, you got to make a profit at the end of the day. Okay, Jeff, we got to get going because I want to get Jarrett on the line. Jeff, what's going on?
Dave, first of all, I apologize. I had a very pressing matter, and apologies go out.
Okay, no problem. Jeff, got a lot of stuff to talk about, and not that much time, but I asked this to Jeremy, and
I just say, I'll come on next week if you guys want.
Maybe in a couple of weeks, okay? Sure. Because next week we're actually going to be doing a tape show. But hey, definitely, we'd love to have you. one of the things I want to ask you is, it's been 9 months or so since you started, and I'm sure that your business plan is obviously changed in some ways, but what have you learned? What would you say are the best lessons that you've learned in those 9 months as far as promoting wrestling and as far as the television industry and how it relates to wrestling today?
What have I learned? That's a specific question, right? Not how we've changed or evolved.
Well, but you can throw in both. But yeah, what have you? I mean, I know you've been going to the boxing matches to talk to all these different television people and stuff. And what have you learned, and what do you see of the television scene right now?
Well, without a doubt, that our seed and Dave, me and you've really never even discussed it. That but I know your firm belief is that pay-per-view really has never worked in a format unless you didn't have a vehicle to drive it.
Right.
I feel stronger today than I did when I started, just because of talking to the television executives on just where programming is going. I mean, 12 months ago, you couldn't buy an episode of Sopranos, and today you can. And that is niche programming. You don't have to subscribe to HBO. You can buy just a series of episodes of Sopranos. So television it's going away. The days of commercials are definitely going away. You're going to have to find creative ways to advertise within. I'm not going to say networks are going to go away. I think that'd be ludicrous. But niche programming, people want what they want when they want it. The TiVo is definitely a huge example of that. That people they don't have time to sit through commercials. They don't have time. They want to pull up their programming, and with the advent of VOD, video on demand, you're going to have in a very short time, in 3 to 5 years, you're going to be able to turn on the TV and pull up not just a movie, but any sporting program, any kind of programming you want. So, and that's what we're all about. We're definitely out of the box thinking. We're on the cutting edge of a program, but what we are is 2 hours, and it's a cliche, but it's 2 hours of total nonstop action, and ours is a alternative wrestling programming from the traditional sense, and that we are. I guess that's the biggest thing, that our concept, I believe in it more now than I did 9 months, 12 months ago.
Okay, as far as content of what wrestling fans want, and I think that's going to be a debate. $1 million
question.
But that's going to be debate forever because nobody will ever really know. But right now, what do you think is in and what do you think is out? Actually, you know what? We better take a commercial so you can, because it's not something you're going to answer in 5 seconds. We're going to go take a commercial break. We're going to come back with Jeff's answer on this right after this. You'll see Wrestling Observer live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We've got Jeff Jarrett and Jeremy BORASH out when it comes to modern-day professional wrestling.
Basically, I guess the easy answer would be it'd be that good mix. You've got to have an excellent in-ring product, because at the end of the day, you have to be able to entertain the fans inside the ring. I think our X division truly is a hybrid form of different styles. It's got some Japanese, and Dave, you can probably debate that or discuss that better than me. But it is got a mixture of lucha libre, Japanese, a little mat wrestling, and just some American rolled into one. And then I think as far as storylines, I think it's exactly what me and you're talking about right now. I think truly the people are very passionate. A lot of people want all entertainment, and a lot of people want strictly wrestling. I think it's somewhere in the middle, more leaning toward the wrestling, because like Dusty Rhodes said, I mean, pro wrestling is on the marquee, and that may be a dirty word to the WWE, but that's really what we're all about. Sports entertainment is the new term for wrestling of the 70s or 80s, and I think it just needs to evolve. I do not think that the fan will sit through matches like they saw in the late 80s, early 90s, two big plods up there, not really giving any action at all. I think that's like watching a basketball game without a three-point shot, or, you were just alluding to the West Coast offense, how offenses change. Well, the business has changed. You definitely have to have an entertaining in-ring product.
Now, one of the things with WWE right now is because of all the injuries, there is a lot of talk there about going to a product, a style of wrestling that hasn't been in vogue and re-educating the public. And I'm very fearful of that because, I know that when,
Could you explain that? Are you talking about?
Working, lengthy working body parts building to one big finisher. You know, that type of, the type of style that to an extent you would have grown up on.
Yeah.
And we're like totally running under. Jeff, we got to have you on in a couple of weeks so we can.
Dave, I'd love to. Once again, I apologize to you and to your listeners, and I'll tell you the story off the air sometime of why the call was late coming in. It's pretty entertaining.
Okay. But anyway, I want to thank Jeff for being here. We're going to get him on because we have a whole bunch of calls for him, and we're going to get him on in just a couple of weeks. And thank Jeremy for pinch hitting while Jeff was busy. And we're going to be back in a couple of weeks. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.